You invent it, you build it, you scale it. Then the doodoo hits the fan, and you have to figure out how to protect what you created. I'm Candice Bernardi. This is Gratitude Geek, the podcast for Gen X women solopreneurs weaving gratitude and appreciation into your business strategy. We are on the second installment of our 12-week momentum series, exploring what momentum actually feels like, where it can take you, and what happens when growth brings opportunity, plus the lessons female founders learn when things get complicated. Today, we're chatting with Amanda Sima, the host of Brain on Loan. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So what would you like the audience to know about you?
I want the audience to know that I have a disorder called serial entrepreneurism. And as a result of that,
I have the same disorder.
I think my husband might agree. And so I am here as a resource through my platform, Brain on Loan, to help entrepreneurs, solopreneurs who are facing any given struggle or conflict. Just want them to know that I'm a free resource. I'm here to sort of turn my pain into their progress.
So you built a collegiate apparel business with more than 150 NCAA licenses.
Yeah.
What inspired you to start that business?
So you told me you're from Michigan. I'm really sorry, but I'm from Ohio.
I know, and a lot of folks don't understand what that means, but it means something.
Okay. We're supposed to be rivals. Yeah. I know. I kind of
A lot of folks don't know that Ohio and Michigan actually fought a war, and that's why Ohio has Toledo and Michigan has the UP. But many people don't know that war took place. It's an actual war, and a shot was fired.
Interesting. Well, it's a love-hate relationship between Ohio State and Michigan, for sure. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio State is my alma mater. And, just like Michigan, giant fan base. I had a grandmother who was just an Ohio State maniac. She had a basement full of just vintage, knickknacks and apparel from decades and decades. And she gave me a vintage Ohio State sweater. And I wore it out one night just for the game. And I was just kind of looking around. And I often say that entrepreneurs, when they start something, they're either inspired by something specific or they're trying to solve a problem. And with my first business, it was definitely an inspiration. I had this vintage sweater on. Everyone else had T-shirts and sweatshirts on. And it was just at a time when the industry was really antiquated. And I thought, and I'm looking around, and there's just tens and tens of thousands just in my presence, Ohio State fans, right? And I thought, that's a really big market. Those numbers, if I sold something different like this, those numbers could get pretty big pretty quickly. And that was sort of the genesis for my collegiate apparel company. It's just, with any business I have, I'll research the market and make sure it's large or reliable enough for me to invest in growing. And I'm thinking everyone in the United States has their own Ohio State, right? Everyone has sort of their school or their following or their team. And so I just started procuring a line that really I thought up in my head. I did a little bit of research. I was a history major at Ohio State. So just did research on what vintage collegiate apparel used to look like back when people dressed a little bit classier, and I just knew I wanted to bring something super unique to an industry that, like I said, was pretty sleepy. And so, I designed with a friend of mine who's a graphic designer. I designed a line. I found a manufacturer, and definitely with the intent of getting the Ohio State license, right? Because people don't know that, if you want to sell an Ohio State hat, you can't just go on the street and do that. It's illegal. You have to get a license from a university. And so it was a whole other complex side of the business that I had to learn pretty quickly. The Ohio State license was always my goal. But I knew that right off the bat, that would be really hard to get because like I said, it's just a really large fan base, arguably one of the largest, if not the largest in the country. So a little more competitive license to get. And so I just went to a couple smaller schools, smaller Big Ten schools. I went to Michigan State, was my second license. Iowa was my first. And once I had a couple under my belt and just started selling locally, I knew I could go to the university and say, hey, like my concept has legs, take a chance on me. Because mind you, I'm competing with Nike. I'm competing with Adidas. I mean, the largest apparel companies in the world have these licenses. And you really got to go to the university and say, I can make you money with my merchandise. And so that's what I did. So I went finally, after I had a couple licenses under my belt, got the Ohio State license. And from there, I was able to successfully recruit investors and bring on the capital that I needed to really grow it into a company, grow it from a concept to a company.
So what you did was take this idea that everybody and their brother wants to be able to make T-shirts in their basement and make money, right? Without understanding that, especially if you're screen printing, it's expensive. The reason why you pay $40 for a T-shirt is because it costs $25 to make the T-shirt, if not more, right? And the margins on clothing are usually 75% or higher, right? So usually the company, the college bookstore is going to pay $10 for the T-shirt and sell it for $39.99. That's usually how that works. So if the T-shirt costs the bookstore $10, then the person who's making it needs to have an out-of-pocket cost of $3, or nobody's making any money on these T-shirts, right? Or the only person making money is the bookstore. That was a lesson in clothing and apparel.
You're right on the money. T-shirts definitely have they have a slimmer margin for many reasons. I mean, you can only sell a T-shirt for so much, and the competition is like ubiquitous. I mean, there's so many people out there doing T-shirts. So unless you're doing something massively different or have a brand following, I mean, you're going to have to sell it sort of at a competitive number. Now, where we differed was, because we were doing knits and they were high quality, we could charge a little bit more. I mean, these were and are still garments that you don't just kind of toss aside and buy a new T-shirt the following year. Like people were really buying them as like keepsakes. And, we imported. So we had to, between tariffs and shipping and then fulfillment. And then on top of that, you have to pay a royalty on every sale to the university. So all of that's got to get baked into your business model. Easy enough with like a few schools, but really got a lot more complex once our licensing portfolio grew.
But what you did was you took this idea that everybody wants to do and you made it so super unique. I mean, you really did fill a niche. So that's the secret. This is Candace talking as if she was the buyer for a chain of retail stores, which is what Candace did before she did what she did before. Right?
Nice.
But what you had was so unique that you immediately, I mean, I can tell based on everything that you've just described that the first 3 licenses were hard. But the next 147 were probably really easy.
It was just scaling at that point because suddenly you have that credibility, right? And the university wants you to succeed. If you succeed, then you're making them money. So they help you get into like multiple. So I guess what I'm trying to say is once in licensing, it's not like you can start off selling to mom and pops here and there. But once you have a licensing portfolio, there's just a set number of customers that have multiple doors. And at the time, there were like only a few players. I mean, I got into Macy's at one point, but only with Ohio State. Like my largest customer that really leveraged my licensing portfolio was Amazon. And I think they ordered like 36 schools and, everything we had in our line. So pretty quickly, the amount of SKUs like skyrockets, right? But that's what you want. Collegiate apparel is a volume game for sure.
Oh, and there's so much money in it. And I've only ever been to one college football game, and it was in San Diego. But I just remember looking around going, wow, there's so many people here.
And again, they're buying year after year. They always want something new.
Well, and they have their season tickets, and they are super fans. I mean, I think they are more so super fan. Oh, I take it back. I went to a game at UC Berkeley too. Uh,
Well, that's fun.
so
That's fun.
they're so super fanish.
Yeah.
I mean, the loyalty to college teams, I think, is more so than the NFL.
Oh, it's 1000% because if for some reason it it kind of snowballs like throughout the family. I feel like more than NFL does. I don't know what it is about college sports. It's just much more nostalgic, I think. Um, and
I
brings
think there's a
community
sense of
together.
belonging because
Yeah, like
most fans went to that school or knew someone, or there's some sort of
exactly.
personal relationship between the school and them.
For sure. Yes.
Let's talk about the momentum. When did you know, and it sounds like it happened quickly, when did you know that you had found momentum in your business?
I think people would expect me to say when we got the Ohio State license because it was so treasured. I think it was really bringing on my first real equity investor because I knew that without the right capital, we would not be able to grow in the way that I had envisioned. And so that was a turning point. When you have someone that says to you, "I'm going to give you hundreds of thousands of dollars," that's no easy feat, especially for female entrepreneurs who have a much harder time fundraising for their businesses. And so when that happened, I knew that I could finally stop worrying about raising money and now just grow my business. Because before that, you're first of all, you're wearing every single hat because your budget is so low, right? So I'm the marketer, I'm the manufacturer, I'm the licensing, I'm compliance, like I'm sales, I'm marketing. Once we got a capital injection, I knew I could start to sort of hire some of that stuff out, not only to take the load off of me, but to hire people who really knew what they were doing, right? I mean, I had never worked in licensing before, so I was able to hire a manager who helped me grow that portfolio. And so really, I would say that capital injection gave the business massive momentum.
Did the investor also offer consulting or just cash?
Mentorship for sure. I mean, he had such a large network. I mean, he was a self-made entrepreneur himself. So, obviously on a much larger scale than me. So he really was surrounded by between his board of directors and just this like personal network and professional network. Yeah, if like we had an issue, he was definitely a mentor as well. And so, not all investors are that way, and some investors can be overbearing in that way. I mean, take your pick, but I would say that if there's anyone out there fundraising for their business, obviously that would be ideal. They would be not completely hands off, and you need to be comfortable with that because we don't know everything, and nor can we anticipate what might pop up, what struggle might pop up in our business. And there's always going to be someone out there that's more seasoned than you that can help you through that struggle.
I had a conversation with someone within the last couple of months, and she was asking for my advice on something that she wanted to do. And I gave her, I said, these are 3 people who are doing something really similar to what you're doing, and it would be so much easier for you if you partnered with them.
Mhm.
And she was like, you took the wind out of my sails. I wanted to do this on my own. And this is a problem that women have. We need to accept help when help is offered.
Yeah, I mean, I had a small business advisor on my podcast recently, and he gave me a story. He had an online business. They were doing 1 to 2 million a year. He had a competitor that was kind of always there, sort of impeding his business. They were doing 1 to 2 million a year, and he called him up and said, "I know who you are. You know who I am. Why don't we partner?" And they partnered, and the next year they made 30 million a year. Everything is situational. Every situation is different, but I would say that partnering is a very good thing. If you want to make money, you want to grow a business. I mean,
We can link to that in the show notes. So who's the guest and the episode number? Do you know it off the top of your head?
yeah, his name's Marty Fonke, and he was episode 3 for me. So definitely a great resource for anyone who's like not only looking to sell their business, but maybe looking to buy a business. What we talked about and on that episode in terms of just financial freedom is, I don't think many people realize who are like, I really want to work for myself. I want to quit my corporate job. I have the dream of owning a business. There's a lot of solid businesses out there where maybe the founders are just aging out and they want to retire, but they have solid operations in place and they have a solid customer base and they have assets. And you could pick up on that with your creative brain and pivot it and grow it further. So that's also another, I'm like the moron who starts from scratch, but like, listen, guys, there's other ways to start a business, and that is buy one that's existing and grow it.
What I have posited is that over the course of these 12 conversations about momentum, we're going to learn that we have 12 different definitions about what momentum actually is.
Mm-hmm.
So, Amanda, what is your definition of momentum in your business?
In my business, as I mentioned before, I would describe momentum as a reduction in distraction. Okay, so
I like that.
Again, I'm not being pulled this way to raise money. I can focus on my business. I'm not being pulled this way to licensing so I can hire someone, so I can continue to grow the vision of the company. Because really, at the end of the day, at least for me as a founder, that's the kind of founder I am, is just sort of that visionary growth. It's not that day-to-day CEO in the weeds type growth. And so I would definitely say momentum in my business is especially as you're starting from scratch and you have a concept and then you've got to build it, then you've got to think about how to protect it, then you got to raise money, and it's just all sort of things that impede running the business, selling. And so for me, definitely a reduction in distraction and minimizing my multiple roles so I can focus on that very important role of growth, of visionary growth.
That was a really good answer.
Thank you.
So what surprised you when your company hit momentum? What was the most surprising part of it?
Well, it's as much as you're hoping for the reduction in distraction, you have trouble letting go a little bit, and trusting others with your baby. And as much as I thought I was ready for that, I think it surprised me how difficult it was for me to transition into a different role. Also too, like there was one instance, it was kind of from a movie in the business where, okay, we had been capitalized, we're growing, and we kind of got that it felt like overnight, but it wasn't, because we were like 6-7 years into it at this point, and we got that purchase order from Amazon, that's like 7 figures.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, just like in the movies, like me, I'm like, my husband and I are embracing. We're like, we did it. And it sounds really lame, but it was surprising to me how magical that moment was. It was like time stood still. And even though it was something we had been working for so long, it almost felt like not real, And so I'm going to say something that's probably controversial, which is, it is like in the movies. It really is. When you get, like, it is a magical moment. It's not like, okay, you keep working, like time sits still in that. And like, I'm being really cheesy about it, but I really didn't expect that, It's like when you're running a business and you're doing it with fortitude and a no-fail mentality, you kind of turn into an all-business person, and the sentimental part of it goes away. But it kind of came back in that moment, and that was really lovely.
No, the whole time stand still thing, it wouldn't be written into the movies if somebody hadn't actually experienced it. Because
right, exactly.
So Amazon is a tricky one with this probably happened. When did the Amazon order come in?
The Amazon order came in the fall of 2016. So
it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Amazon between then and now, Amazon has had a reputation kind of pivot. Amazon did something amazing for your family, your company, and all the people who work for you and with you. You
Yeah.
know, how do we as the people who are working with said companies, how we balance, do you
I know
understand where
what
I'm
you're
trying to go
saying.
with this? Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of hard to
mean,
articulate what I'm trying to say, but you know where I'm going.
I know where you're going. I mean, listen, there's first of all, I'm a US business. I'm an American business and I had American employees, right? So I'm not going to pick and choose my customers at the expense of my employees and their paychecks. So as entrepreneurs, we're free market capitalists, right? Um, but that doesn't mean that we don't have opinions on corporate conduct and corporate behavior. Trust me, I have a lot of opinions on that. I'm in litigation right now over corporate misconduct. And I think they're important conversations to have for sure, because corporations, for the most part, is now more than ever, are getting bigger more than ever. And they're kind of getting the power is kind of getting out of control. It's why we have antitrust laws in the U.S. government to keep these businesses from getting too powerful at the mercy of the consumer. They're important conversations to have for sure, but I would never, with exceptions, with extreme exceptions, like I'm not going to sell. I'm not going to take on a customer who's animal testing abusively. Do you know what I mean? Like those are extreme exceptions. But when we're talking about, um, I would say more innocuous things, it would just be silly to turn down business when you're, you're trying to grow a company. No one's perfect for sure. And I think, like I said, it's okay to have those conversations and call that stuff out. Um, but I don't think that means you turn away customers. I'm not of that opinion. Amazon, definitely they're different every year. I mean, back when we were selling to them, they were the first company, that was the first buyer that gave me like real exposure to the market and got us in a lot of doors. And I didn't experience what I know a lot of companies are experiencing now, which is they're letting sort of knockoff companies come on to the platform and sort of undermine your business. Now, I do understand that they're getting better about mitigating that. I didn't experience that. So as a matter of fact, that turned my small business into almost a corporation. And so that doesn't mean I'm blind to like their misconduct somehow, but I just think that that's not a conversation that we should be having within the context of growing our own businesses and what we're and feeding our families with and feeding other families with, because I had 10 employees.
Yeah. It's a tough one. It's really tough,
Hmm.
but I think that as long as you as long as your company is behaving ethically, then the way that you make money is your business and not anybody else's.
Yeah, and also I just think with social media, a lot of consumers. This is the power of the consumer, and the power of the consumer pool is, especially with these younger generations, they really are purchasing with their wallet.
Mm.
And if you don't like something that a certain company does, then don't buy from them. And really, that's the only way to get them to knock off what they're doing. And I think that that's a really powerful tool that we're seeing more and more of. It's funny, like my
It
14-year-old
does work.
mom.
It's
Oh,
supposed
it
to work.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, don't you use ChatGPT for any of your businesses. It ruins the environment. Like this just stuff she's like seeing on TikTok. And so it's a real tool for sure. So, I would say to anyone, if you take issue with any company, you have the power not to purchase from them,
Mhm.
right? That's your right.
So I have one more question about momentum. So how did it change your business, and did you end up where you thought you were going?
No. Momentum with my first business ended up being a curse because we grew too fast. In hindsight, there were a lot of things that I wouldn't have known in the moment. I was 34 years old, things that I couldn't have necessarily anticipated. Definitely did not anticipate the level of, I don't even want to say success, but just like the level of orders that we began to get. It's like my sales guy was doing too good of a job because we just weren't capitalized or set up operationally to fulfill those. The good thing was we were creating lines that the buyers wanted, but we didn't have the capacity and we weren't properly. This is like, not everything is black and white. Don't do this, do this. In my instance, I would have done something differently. And that was, we got to the point where we had equity investors and then we took on bank financing. And that nearly put us out of business because banks are much more restrictive with growth. And we just didn't have enough money to fill orders. And we had to service that note every month. And it was just it really hindered the business. So the momentum definitely, we grew too fast. And it got to a point where it was just so big that I wasn't equipped to run it. So I ended up exiting and handing the business over to my partners. And honestly, to this day, I don't really know what they ended up doing with it because they're not in the apparel business. But it was time for me to go. I would kind of had other things that I wanted to do. I had other products I wanted to create. But I would say that, momentum
is that the T-shirt business that you exited?
The apparel business, yeah.
Okay.
I would say that the cautionary tale is that momentum needs to be handled properly because it really can, there's two different or more ways of going out of business. But I would say the two main ones are you don't have sales and you do have sales, but it's going too fast and you can't manage everything. And so we were definitely the latter. Momentum is a good thing, but it must be dealt with carefully for sure, thoughtfully.
That's good advice. Okay, I want to pivot to the litigation.
Yeah, so I after I exited the apparel company, I designed a plastic lid. Sounds like you have kids or have a child. I have 3 daughters. I was getting tired of taking my 2-year-old out to dinner. And you know what they do when they go out to dinner? They tip their cup up like they do at home because they have sippy cups at home. And they want the kids' cup. They want the restaurant kids' cup. So they bring out the restaurant kids' cup. She'd tip it up. She'd knock it over. It'd spill. And so I just looked at it one day and I thought, why don't we have disposable lids for kids? We have them for adults, but we don't have them for kids. Kids are half the population. So I designed a lid that catered to younger kids with the sippy spout. It has a straw slot for older kids. And I think the most novel part of the design is just the way that it attaches to the cup. So when it tips over, it doesn't leak. The lid doesn't pop off. It's basically spill-proof. To me, this was my unicorn idea. I mean, this was my billion-dollar idea for a couple reasons. Number one, just the volume is in the billions worldwide. Plastics is a multi-billion volume game, right? It's a pennies game. And so volume's very high, and it was globally unique. No one was doing it at the time. So unique, but so common sense. And my patent attorney is like, you're not going to get a patent on this. Like it already exists. I'm like, no, it doesn't. And of course I was right. She was wrong. So was so excited about this lid. And I brought on an investor, very, very high net worth individual, the one that I mentioned, who had sold his business, now had another distribution business. By far the best investor I had had to date because he was also an amazing mentor because his business and distribution was so complex. And if anything would come up, he'd have an answer for it like right away. And so investor in place, awesome product, manufacturer in place, design patent pending. We were kind of like off to the races. And I got to the point where, I had to expose the product a little bit. So I was definitely paranoid about a corporation copying it. And so I met with a sales rep at a trade show, which is what we do. We're trying to get trade reps on to help us sell and get into market. And the first thing he said to me was, you really should sell this to WNA, which was a plastics company. And I said, maybe eventually we'll sell the concept, but I want to scale it right now on my own. Why? Because I want to get a bigger number. I don't want to sell it for $1 million. I knew it was $1 billion product. And so he said, I'm going to help you sell. And he took my things. And within 3 months, WNA had a copycat lid in market. And the biggest bummer was I went to my patent attorney. In fact, at first I was like kind of flattered because a company that big, they're like a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They don't copy things to this degree. Anyone who knows plastics, there's tooling involved. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to copy something like this and produce it. So I was kind of flattered because I was like, oh, I have a patent in place and like that'll protect me. So I went to my investor. I showed him that we had a copycat product. Within 2 weeks, he dropped out. He's gone. So my investor's gone. And I go to my patent attorney and I'm like, what are our options? And she's like, nothing you could do because their design looks a little bit different than yours. And there's no patent case. So put me out of business overnight. Unfortunately, the story gets worse because eventually I did hire a team of attorneys to pursue this corporation a couple years later, and found out that the attorney who was representing me was self-dealing, trying to get a job, did get a job with the law firm representing the corporation. So I'm in a legal malpractice lawsuit against my attorney, my law firm, against the corporation, their law firm. It's like, I just wanted to sell a lid, bro. Like, this is insane. Like, so this kind of goes back to the conversation that I'm trying to have through my platform, through appearances like this about corporate misconduct. I mean, we're talking about a private equity-backed $6 billion corporation. Like, you need my little lid. Like, you don't need my lid, right? They went on to get a utility patent. If you have any listeners who know anything about patents or want to know more about patents, the reason my design patent was basically worthless is because it just protects what the lid looks like. So if someone wanted to come in and copy how it functions but make it look a little differently, there's no lawsuit there. Now, a utility patent, which my attorney talked me out of, I got bad legal advice. Utility patent protects how it functions. And if I had gotten that utility patent, maybe they still would have tried to knock it off, but then I would have had a patent case. But they went on to get a utility patent. So even if I'm like, well, I'm going to battle that corporation, I can't. I'm legally precluded because our products function the same. I'm legally precluded from producing my own design and market. And when I found out they got that utility patent, I said, no, like this is not right. And that is my product. That's my design. I know exactly what happened and I'm getting it back. So the litigation's going on 3 years now, going through the court system. But, we're obviously, we are confident we will prevail. And it's not only important for me to prevail for myself and for if I want my product back out there, but just for fairness in general. I talked earlier about antitrust laws in the government. And that prevents two giant corporations from merging, right? So they don't get too powerful. But there's a version of like antitrust stuff going on behind the scenes, or I would say trust stuff going, and that's these corporations who are stealing off the backs of creators, and they get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
I have on my
and
brain on loan.
it's not being enforced.
It's not. And the patent process largely benefits large corporations and not small creators. And small creators are what are the backbone of our economy. And so I'm out there, as a sort of an entrepreneurial advocate, raising awareness on like what happened to me. I get stories, I get listeners who contact me and they're like, me too, me too, me too. And so I think we need to have a conversation about corporate conduct. No one talks about it enough. For every one of me, thousands go away. And I'm just looking to end that.
All right, listener, we have talked about intellectual property with a couple of attorneys, and I will link to both to those episodes in the show notes. Because if you own a business and you are not protecting your designs, your intellectual property, you are opening yourself up to it being stolen. And I know that it gets stolen because people, when my custom furniture business was active, I would find photographs that I took with my camera on other people's websites. So
It
it
happens
happens.
every day.
It happens. And one person that I asked to take the photo down says to me, "I don't see what the big deal is." At that point, you're speechless.
Yeah,
So
I know.
Amanda, for the solopreneur who has a big idea that could be their billion-dollar idea, what is your biggest piece of advice for them?
My biggest piece of advice. Oof, that's a loaded question. Well, you're saying if you have a product that you think is a billion-dollar idea. Well, I think my biggest piece of advice is I was a guest on another podcast where we talked about how to protect your creation, and there's definitely different layers of protection. And I'm not going to go through them all now, but I think something that I think is really important when you're in the early stages of creating is to keep everything as local as possible. I'll give you an example. Like when I was designing my lid, I found an engineer 20 minutes down the street. I didn't find a giant firm with a ton of people who I could trust, could not trust. I found a small business owner like me who takes his NDA seriously, who had integrity. And if he had done something with it, I could literally drive down the street and punch him in the nose, right? So I say to people, you're going to get to a point where you have to expose your product. And you just have to pray that those protections are in place, that you did all the right things to preclude anyone from stealing it. But early on, I think when you're really not trying to expose it, but you've got to work through that product development, keep everything as local as you possibly can within your community. These are people that are going to be way more likely to respect the confidentiality surrounding your product. I think it's critical.
NDA. Did you have that salesperson sign an NDA?
No, but here's the thing,
because he made money on that.
Yeah,
he's the one you should be suing, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, we were that's our kind of case within the case. We were going to bring claims against that company. The thing is, there are certain aspects, like there's so many sales reps, for example. It would be like executing 1,000 NDAs. So it does get to a point where it's not, it's not really feasible. But I did learn this. In my email signature, I have like a giant confidentiality paragraph. So that if I send something to someone, even unsolicited, it says, hey, do not use any of this for yourself. Do not pass it along unauthorized. Don't do any of that. Because if you do get to litigation or threatening litigation, you can at least say, hey, I had a disclaimer, in the email that I sent you or in our correspondence, and you had an obligation not to forward this on to someone. I didn't have that at the time. Now, we had other claims. I mean, they still messed up in a number of ways. So we had other claims to pursue, but had I had that in place, it would have been maybe a stronger legal path.
So the three things that I heard from you that are important to do are not just a design patent, but also a functionality patent.
Yes, a utility patent. They are more expensive, okay, but worth it if you have something.
Don't let your attorney talk you out of it.
No, you just find a really good patent attorney. I mean, and it takes cash. I'm not gonna act like it doesn't. Now, what an alternative is, you can file a provisional, which is sort of a temporary utility patent, which means basically you're first in line. You have 12 months from filing the provisional to file the full utility patent. That gives you protection. And you can start selling it in market to see if it has legs, to see if there's a market for your product, maybe generate some revenue that would constitute the utility patent. So when you go to file the full patent, basically the effective date is that 12 months before. So if you have something in market, you with a provisional patent, and a competitor comes in and starts knocking it off, and within that 12-month period, if you filed a full utility patent, then it's retroactive to that date. You were the first in line. It's your utility patent. If someone tries to come in and file their utility patent, you are first in line. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's something I could have done. Yeah, I just didn't have a very good patent attorney, to be honest. A good patent attorney would advise you well.
My husband is my business partner, has been for as long as we've been married. His thing for as long as we've been together, always get 3 quotes. Don't go with the first patent attorney that you talk to. Talk to 2 others.
Thank you.
I'm going to add that. I'm going to add that. So, okay. So make sure you get your patents in place. Keep everything local.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your circle small. And I can't remember the third. What is?
Well, execute NDAs for sure. Execute NDAs.
The email, execute the NDAs and the email signature.
Yeah. So I think that after my interaction with that guy, who ironically enough, I wouldn't say he was local to me. He was definitely local to the state, but still, definitely bummed me out to know that there's people out there that were just like, just gonna take this and send it somewhere else. You know what I mean?
I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised.
Me neither at this point.
It's creepy. It's creepy.
It is. It is.
Creepy. All right. So tell us about your podcast.
Podcast, Brain on Loan. I sort of opened with it. Who am I? I've now detailed all of the painful phases I've gone through in my business. I do get a lot of friends, family, friends of friends, who are always constantly asking for advice. It could be, I want to sell my business. I've been through that process. It could be, how do I start an LLC? How do I get an EIN? Like just basics. I hate the idea that anyone has to pay for advice to start a business. We all start like on a shoestring budget. And on top of that, I started Brain on Loan just to talk about my lawsuit and increase awareness surrounding it, increase awareness around corporate piracy, trying to create a conversation and a movement that would change that sort of conduct that goes to protect small business owners and creators. Obviously, something I'm very passionate about. And so I just have people on from all walks of life who are also willing to loan their brain. And anyone's free to reach out to me or any of my guests for any sort of advice, whether it's business or non-business. I say this too a lot, that I think business owners, small business owners, have really, really unique capabilities. We are able to unpack complex situations, maybe easier than some, work through conflicts without getting emotional. And I just think there's a lot of things that we learn as small business owners that lend a lot to our personal lives too. So it's literally just brain for free. And if it's something even that like I can't answer, I feel like I have a wide enough network now that I can connect people. Again, just to sort of satisfy any conflict or struggle that's going on in their lives.
How do you weave gratitude into your business strategy?
Grow. So I talk about this all the time. I think I'm very passionate about it in life or in business, that we have to be really, really grateful for the pain and the setbacks. I think it's a wrong mindset to go into anything challenging, hoping for everything to go right and hoping for no pain, because you don't grow from that. And I think that in fact think that discussing failure over success is a more fascinating conversation, because that's where you gain value. And so I'm really passionate about being grateful and embracing pain in any way that it comes into your life, because you grow from it and there's no avoiding it, right? And imagine your mindset when if you're going into your business and you're expecting the worst, then you're ready for probably what's not even the worst, right? Your mindset is everything. And so that's kind of for me, if I would not have said this when I was going through the pain of my first business on any given day. But in hindsight, I'm so grateful for it because I'm a smarter entrepreneur because of it. I'm a more patient entrepreneur. I'm a more disciplined entrepreneur. And so, yeah, I think that that for me would be my biggest takeaway is just to be grateful for that pain and those setbacks.
We learn more from our failure than we do from our wins.
Yes.
As I always say, appreciation and gratitude go hand in hand, and appreciation also means growth.
Mm-hmm.
The more we appreciate, the more we grow. So
That's
you
right.
just reiterated my favorite saying. Amanda Sima, this is your moment of gratitude. For whom or what are you most grateful?
This is super lame. And it's like, okay, everyone's gonna be like, yeah, but I'm gonna say my husband because it sounds like you and your husband are business partners. My husband has always unapologetically been my very first investor and believer in me and what I've wanted to grow. I've taken a lot of risk and we're still in the risk zone because we're in this like massive litigation. I could not have done any of my businesses and had my children and had this life without his support. So when I say he's my very first investor, when we're self-funding things, he's, I quit my full-time job about 2 years into my first business. I've been doing business ever since. So just as a business owner, it's definitely him. Like, I couldn't have the life that I do without his support. So that's just the reality. It's actually not a sappy thing that I like want him to listen to. And like, it's just a reality of my situation. So definitely my husband.
Thanks for tuning in to Gratitude Geek, the podcast for Gen X women solopreneurs who weave gratitude and appreciation into your business strategy. This is episode 333. Our theme music is by Rev Brock and Soul Lily. I've been your host, Candice Rodarty. Stay groovy, my friends.
Stay groovy, my friends.